This podcast is for leaders at diverse levels and organizations around the world who are seeking to scale and transform their leadership, to level up their business and to create an impact in the lives of people all around them. Business topics, trends, innovation, and the intersection with leadership is the focus. We enable success. I'm your host, Stephen Paul. In this episode, we meet an innovative leader who has achieved extraordinary milestones in the intersect of blockchain and artificial intelligence for diversity and inclusion, amongst other things. This is a lot of hype on this topic in the last decades. This is beyond cryptocurrencies. We're talking about the broader blockchain, which amongst other things is also defined as a shared and decentralized and trusted digital archive with multiple features. We're joined by a leader in her own right. She's the founder and CEO of TiiQu, aiming to establish a new standard for trust. And we'll learn today how blockchain works in the context of TiiQu solution, what this means, why this invention, and Laura's journey. Welcome, Dr. Laura Degiovanni. How are you doing this fine morning?
Hi, Stephen. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I'm doing very well. Although I'm back in London from Italy, which is my country, but I live in London, and is quite cloudy. But the future looks bright to my eyes, so everything good.
Wonderful, Laura. It's the start of the week, and definitely the weatherman says, or the weather person says, that there is going to be some interesting forecast, sunshine too, for later this week. So, Laura, tell us a little bit about your personal journey. I recognize that you've just mentioned that you're from Italy. Tell us about your personal journey and how you've come about into your professional world and how you're progressing with that.
Well, well, I'm the daughter of entrepreneurs. So my life started, my professional life started in the family business, which was a retail business. And from there, I moved to a multinational group that expanded retail networks across the EMEA market. And then I came to, let's say, to a breaking point, a pain point where I was looking for meaningfulness, and I was looking to have an impact. And I felt that the large organizations where I was part of didn't offer the right context. And the turning point was where I finally understood the importance of placing individuals at the very core of a strategy. And I felt that the context where I was not doing that sufficiently. So I didn't have a solution, and I left the company and started a sabbatic year, traveling in Asia and up and down. And I fell in love for an idea, for a concept, which was it was my first time I was traveling with Airbnb, and I fell in love for this idea of platforms and the ability to monetize one's assets, basically. And I said, well, I thought to myself, how can we convert what an individual can bring to the table into assets and enable everyone to showcase their assets independently from companies. And that's where I started to investigate. And in the problem of trust, I realized that companies hire business cards instead of individuals, and mainly because they need to trust that someone or an entity will deliver. And so I started to get interested into the issue of trust, and that's where I came across a YouTube channel talking about the blockchain technology, and I would say it was a kind of enlightenment.
Okay, wonderful, Laura. That's great to hear about your journey. So let's explore this a little bit more. So tell us more about TiiQu. the founding of TiiQu. You mentioned about blockchain. You watched a YouTube video and it gave you a bit of an aha moment there, connecting what you wanted to do from your personal journey. Tell us a little bit more about TiiQu, and let's go into the specifics of your solution as well.
Well, my aim has always been that of empowering people to a point where they can exploit themselves at the maximum of their potential. But there are two issues. The first is that it's very hard to get one's potential recognized and one's achievements recognized in a way that others can trust them. And the second is to project them into a high speed changing world. So that's where I already mentioned it, how I understood about the blockchain technology and how I learned about it the first time. But from there up to a point where I really understood how blockchain technology could be adopted, it took me, let's just say, 6 months of learning in London. So I moved to London, and I started to attend lots of events and explore how this could be the underlying technology of my dream. And that's where I realized, yes, that the transparency and immutability of records was a fundamental element to enable an individual to be trusted, because this feature allows everyone to convert whatever they say about themselves into immutable records and therefore be trusted for what they say, because I think we are all see the difficulty of trusting whatever passes through platforms today. And then there was a missing piece. I say, yes, so you can convert pieces of truth into immutable records, but any small piece of truth only represents a distinct instant. So how do you project how that instant can influence the future? And that's where AI can come in. I think the two technologies are interdependent and complementary to really influence the change we need in society towards a sustainable and human-centric future.
Yeah, and that's very interesting, Laura. So tell us a little bit more about the actors in your solution. So you've mentioned about blockchain, you've mentioned about trust, you've mentioned about artificial intelligence. But when we talk a little bit more about your solution,
Yeah. Okay. So let's just say that we, along the journey, we have developed a number of technologies, and I mention you three of them. The first was the TiiQu score. So the TiiQu score is an algorithmically calculated score which brings together identity, verification, reputation, and performance. It doesn't say if you or whoever is good or not. It says if their credentials, their proofs, their story is true and valid at a given time. So when you have a value that synthetically express how much you can trust a set of claims, well, then trust is much easier, and most importantly, this value can be the enabler of any virtual identity to interact with others. However, making a piece of truth impossible to be falsified is not enough. So beside the TiiQu score, we developed a, a skills assessment tool, which has some particular feature, which is it continuously adapts to how well the individual answers. And it is crowdsourced based, which means that experts in specific domains create continuously questions that are added to a kind of Wikipedia of questions, and enable all users to benchmark their skills against a crowd of peers, and signal their real expertise in real time, matched to the existing knowledge, not to a static qualification. So on one side, we enable the assessment in real time of one's skills, and on the other side, we crystallize that piece of truth, so the result of an assessment, into an immutable record. And the third element is where that comes in is the TiiQu score, which synthesize a lot of element proofs and crystallize the journey and the development of an individual. So the when you want to collaborate with somebody, what is most importantly important is certainly what they know, but how they use what they know for adding value to their next step, so their potential. So three technology at this point: TiiQu score that synthesize lots of information, a certification system that uses the blockchain for storing and making immutable the informations, and an assessment tool that uses the wisdom of the crowd for researching what is the level of competency of an individual.
That's amazing, Laura. Three solutions that you've developed and interconnected. So is it safe to say that these solutions would be used both by businesses and individuals within those businesses, or can it be used independently?
Okay, so the three technologies have been developed as individual modules, but we synthesize them into a single mobile application, which is called MyTiiQu, and we are going to release it very soon. To answer to your question, we have a focus. So the core of our strategies is the individual, and let's say human sustainability, the ability for an individual to continuously grow and be recognized for whom they are. Now, to answer your question, if this a B2B or a B2C, well, it is certainly a B2C, and it could be a B2B, but it requires that the company is an entity that plays at the very core of their strategies, the individual, because you are calling our technologies solutions, and when I hear the term solution, I immediately, especially in the human space, I immediately think of these large HR exhibitions where there are hundreds of solutions there, and HR people looking around desperately to find their next thing that can be easily integrated, and the cost not so much, etc., etc. So that's not TiiQu. That's not what we offer. If probably the first question that I would ask to an employer, if we meet and we discuss a possible collaboration, is what is the place that the individual has in your company? Because if it is not central, then there is the research for a solution that integrates well with existing solutions. Well, probably that will not be our place. Not because MyTiiQu cannot integrate, because it is an independent application that allows the individual to interact with whoever they want. But the point is that we require the employer to have a very different perspective, where the point is not about looking or observing what the individual is, but allowing the individual to continuously grow and eventually share their performance, their results, and their skills with the employer. So the let's just say the reputation system, MyTiiQu, allows the individual to share with the employer, not the employer to manage the individual's growth.
Yeah, and that's actually very true, because in essence, what you're looking at is ensuring that there is a common platform or synergy between the corporate, the business company, to take an interest and to have a strategy around their people, where you can actually leverage your product and focus it on the individuals. Is that kind of a summarized view there?
Yeah, I think we are very close. What we mainly want is to offer a different perspective, where the employer can establish mm, a more equilibrated relationship with the employee, and recognizing him as the owner of a set of assets. So in synthesis, what I realized in my corporate life was that to the individual is required maybe the 10% of their brain, um, and this because the structure in itself doesn't recognize enough what an individual could give beyond the average. Um, but if we enable the individual to continuously grow their own potential, well, at that point, he will be much more committed and available to share that with the company. So it's really setting the basis for a different approach, which enable an individual to manage their skills as assets.
No, thank you, Laura. And Laura, which sectors does TiiQu have a unique advantage? Is it multi-sector, or do you focus on one particular sector, and types of companies, size, and so forth?
Well, we are, let's just say, sector agnostic, but the way we plan our growth is much more related to the skill set that are targeted. So today we are targeting the sustainability skills and the emerging technologies skills, and then will come the the mathematics space. So the reason why basically we create tribes of individuals that share the same interests and the same abilities. And the reason why we decided to go first with the sustainability and emerging technologies is that one is interdependent to the other, and probably they are transversal to any company. Not necessarily of every size. We look at companies with highly technology driven, or with numbers that go over the 200 people approximately. Yeah, did I
Okay.
answer your question? Yeah.
Absolutely, Laura. And what trends or shifts are you seeing in the markets? We're in the UK, in UK versus Europe, for example, or North America, or LATAM, other continents. What kind of shifts or trends are you seeing in this space?
I don't think well, yes, there is a geographic definition of the trends, but I think there are macro trends that anyone should care about, at least in developed countries. Undeveloped countries or developing countries may have different perspectives. Um, but yes, and I would say that there is one element that seems not be considered enough, and is that Generation Z is completely changing the way um, individuals, so the young generation, approach products, uh, work life, and mm, and choice,
Yeah.
and that uh, this should drive a completely different approach in how we produce, how we present, and how we collaborate. Although it seems, well, by in 10 years, the 70% of the workforce will be from the younger generations. So we definitely need to keep in mind that is not a choice, is a must for any company to focus on what the younger generation wants and how the younger generation act. So it's a matter of uh, approaching the future with embedding a sustainability within any process and any approach, which is not exactly what is happening. And sustainability means also using technologies in a sustainable way. So this, I guess, is our macro trends that are not enough considered so far,
Yeah.
regardless which is the region you are in.
Yeah, yeah, no, that thank you. That's very enlightening. And we have in the last 2 years we have undergone some challenging times in the business as a result of pandemic. How has that affected TiiQu, and how you've been approaching your business?
Well, we have been we live in a very innovative context. We have always been a remote first company. Certainly, because the human aspect is so important. The lack of meeting and or simply enjoying together um, was hard. So that's probably the most difficult thing. Having spent, let's say, at least 1 year and a half completely remote, it was definitely challenging. And how we solved, well, I can't say that we solved that aspect. We tried to mitigate by um, enhancing the number and the quality of our virtual life with the team, but it was definitely hard. So I'm very happy that now we are over, let's say, or at least we have accepted the idea that this is the new normality. I think that there is one lesson learned from the pandemic that we should all take into account, and which is collaboration. It needs to be transversal and um, without boundaries. Uh, and that to do that, technology is certainly the only way to go. Um, Now, the COVID crisis clearly uh, explained how little is our approach that is full of um, uh, closed gardens where organizations or countries tend to limit their potential to a specific perimeters, which is something that doesn't fit anymore. Mm, So we should learn from COVID a new way of collaborating and trusting more. open source, crowdsource, and the distributed systems.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Things have actually changed, and you mentioned some key points there around collaboration and trust. It's a different way of life and doing things these days. So, from your perspective, when we look at leaders across the globe, businesses, what important trends or topics are on your mind these days? I recognize blockchain and AI and trust and people are big things, but what are these big items or big topics or trends that you feel would impact the business leaders, or as an executive team or even board of directors? Can you give some light on that, please?
Well, human beings are tribal by nature. So mm, the more trust is lacking in the world, and the more people tend to gather into trusted communities. Um, a, I think the shift that organizations need to do is to see themselves as a community, and add value to their members as members. Um, so it seems naive, but thinking of the happiness of their members will um, make their contribution much higher, and their loyalty to the tribe even much stronger. So uh, technology is an enabler, but without the culture that enable the adoption of that technology in itself is zero. So when I looked at blockchain, what I loved was the concept of a trustless ecosystems. So ecosystems that didn't really need trust, because trust was enabled by the underlying technology. So I think organizations need to revise themselves as tribes, where individuals find their satisfaction, their meaningfulness, and are enabled to have an impact, which requires also them to make some mistakes.
Yeah.
So is building that context, that culture that will then influence any kind of the technology that will be adopted or created,
Yeah.
and any new process that will be placed in that company.
Yeah. And Laura, do you feel that that particular aspect should be placed on the agenda, consciously placed on the agenda, so that it can be addressed in a conscious manner?
I think we need to shift from words to facts. So I see um, many companies, and also this SDG run for the SDGs, etc., and the reports and the reporting and the measurements, etc. I find all this very wordy, but not deep enough. So I don't see enough facts behind um, the reports of the supposed sustainability of organizations. So um, if we we can demonstrate with the facts our good intentions, um, this equilibrium created the level of trust that individuals want from their companies. Um, so yes, we definitely needed to put it into the agenda, and into active and proactive mm, thoughts and activities of boards. But we first need to interrogate ourselves what kind of companies we want to build, and from there build um, uh, set out the values and the measurement of values progress that definitely can um, signal what is the progress.
Thank you, Laura. That's very very enlightening. So let's move to Laura. So you know yourself on a on a single day. You know what does a day in the life of Laura look like from a professional and personal perspective? Share with
Well,
us.
well, Stephen, I will be very boring. I don't have well, first of all, I don't make a distinction between personal life and professional life. To me, is life. When I decided I went to Asia for my sabbatic year, and I came back and I left my corporate life with everything paid, a nice apartment in Paris, and I found myself building a startup with all what means building a startup and self-founded, etc. Um, I I made a choice, and the choice was to devote myself um, to 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 change the way people could reach their and identify their um, the way to impact the future, and this requires all my efforts. So there is no from the day from 7 o'clock in the morning when I get up. So I'm one of the founder that sleep very well during the night, huh? And I sleep at least 7 hours. So just because, no, because the world is full of people saying that they sleep 4 hours per day. I don't. I sleep 7 hours per day, and I sleep very well. And yes, uh, the central point for me is adding value to people, and so that's um, my constant thought. And I read a lot, and I write enormously. I spend a lot of time in interaction. But at this point, we are preparing the ground for launching our MyTiiQu. So we are creating and expanding the initial tribes in the sustainability and the emerging tech space. So we are looking at meaningful employers and experts in specific domains to gather around the TiiQu movement towards a better future for everyone. So my typical day is get up 7 o'clock, thinking TiiQu until evening when I go to sleep. And in the middle, a lot of meetings, a lot of talks, and a lot of time with my team.
Well done, Laura. And you mentioned about you know the TiiQu launch and so forth. Is that your next big business adventure that you're continuing, or do you have some future plans? And if you do,
W-
share with us.
Well, the next step is certainly the launch. But if I had to think, well, of course, my venture is TiiQu, but part of TiiQu is also launching a Qpedia. Qpedia the is yet to become because we are currently registering the charity. So it's going to become a charity aiming to enable everyone to access knowledge. It is in crowdsourced Wikipedia of questions and answers that allows any expert in a specific domain to gain visibility by contributing questions that others will answer to benchmark their skills and understand eventually what the gap of their knowledge to in order for being for progressing basically. that will be where MyTiiQu will invite users from for then creating tribes of experts in specific domains. So my next my little child is Wikipedia right now, and up with the idea to grow it up sufficiently to be an independent charity and able to deliver the dream of knowledge for everyone.
Laura, that is an audacious goal and a vision, and I know that you'll make that happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Yeah, not a problem. And we're coming to a close very shortly. So, Laura, let me ask you: do you have any closing messages or actions that or a challenge that you want to put to other leaders who are listening, who might be listening to this?
Well, think people first. Don't expect a technology to do what you don't do in terms of culture, and think global. Boundaries and closed gardens are no more suitable for the future of that younger generation look at.
Laura, thank you very much for enlightening us with your technology, the product, and TiiQu, and basically your journey. That is very inspiring. Okay, folks, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, folks, thank you very much for listening in, and stay tuned for our next episode with another great leader who will be sharing her journey on educational technology and how she's making waves with technology for kids in schools. Thank you and have a wonderful